Imagine you are a tech CEO who just spent, literally $1 billion on servers, only to realize your enterprise customers don't actually know how to turn them on.
Oh, yeah. That is a total nightmare scenario.
Right. Or, say you're a political operative who just got handed a blank check that has been locked away in a vault since the Watergate scandal.
Which is exactly what we're looking at today.
Exactly. Today is Tuesday, June 30, 2026, and the old playbooks are actively burning. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we are unpacking an incredibly dense edition of the Daily Tech Reader blog today. And our mission for you listening is to navigate this single crazy 24-hour period where courts, global markets, and the literal tectonic plates of the earth are just causing massive realignments.
Yeah, it's a huge day. We are looking at vanishing trillions, rewired supply chains, and totally rewritten constitutional interpretations.
It's a lot. Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the money, because the contradiction we are seeing in the market this morning is, well, it's staggering.
It really is. It's the kind of contradiction that usually signals a massive structural shift right underneath the surface of the economy.
Right. So here's the setup. U.S. markets are closing the first half of 2026 on an absolute tear.
Huge gains.
Yeah. The Dow is marking its best 6-month gain in 5 years. The NASDAQ is hitting its strongest quarter since 2020.
Which is incredible on paper.
Yeah. And reading the broader financial press, that surge is largely being driven by, optimistic expectations around Fed interest rate cuts.
Right, which obviously makes borrowing money cheaper for businesses.
Exactly. That and general AI infrastructure spending. And this is the crazy part, inside that broader success story is just this massive crater.
A massive crater.
The so-called Magnificent Seven, the tech giants like Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and Tesla. They just collectively shed $2.3 trillion in market cap.
Trillion with a T.
Trillion with a T.
Yeah, which, forces us to ask why. Why are the titans of the industry bleeding trillions while the broader market thrives? And I think what we're witnessing right now is essentially the great AI reality check.
The reality check.
Yeah, because for the last 2 years, Wall Street operated purely on AI enthusiasm. If you were a tech giant and you announced a $10 billion capital expenditure on AI data centers, investors rewarded you.
He just threw money at you.
Yeah, exactly. They bought the vision of a transformed future. But as we head into the second half of 2026, the mechanism driving the stock price has fundamentally changed. Wall Street is aggressively shifting its focus from enthusiasm to actual economics.
Right. They want to see the receipts.
Yes. Investors are finally sliding a piece of paper across the table and asking for the specific timeline on a return on investment.
Okay, wait. I'm actually a bit confused by that logic.
Oh, so?
Well, if Wall Street is actively punishing companies for spending too much capital on AI without showing immediate returns, why is AWS, Amazon Web Services, why are they announcing today that they're dumping another $1 billion into a brand new AI unit? Aren't they just running straight into the fire?
Well, they are, but they're doing it out of pure defensive necessity.
Okay.
You have to look closely at how AWS is spending that $1 billion. They aren't just buying more silicon or building another cooling tower.
Right, they're doing something else.
Yeah, they are physically embedding their engineers directly with their enterprise customers.
Oh, wow.
They are essentially parachuting Amazon employees into these legacy businesses to build out the AI deployments for them. And they're doing this specifically to fight off market share threats from Microsoft Azure.
So they're pivoting from, selling a self-serve platform to basically operating like a bespoke consulting firm.
Precisely. Because the friction of actually adopting AI is turning out to be much higher than anyone anticipated.
Right.
It is one thing to sell a company a subscription to a massive language model. It is another thing entirely for that company to seamlessly integrate it into their HR software or supply chain logistics without completely breaking their existing systems.
That makes sense.
So the pressure to show tangible value is forcing these tech giants to literally hold their customers' hands. Because, if the customers don't start seeing a return on their AI subscription soon, they're going to cancel them. And then the tech giants' revenue projections just completely collapse.
It reminds me of the classic New Year's gym membership drive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but on a $1 trillion scale, think about it. In early 2026, everyone bought the most expensive state-of-the-art gym equipment based purely on enthusiasm.
Right. They bought the specialized shoes, the smart weights.
The premium protein powder, exactly. But now, the investors are acting like highly impatient personal trainers. They are walking into the corporate gym, looking at all this shiny equipment just sitting in the corner, and they're demanding to see actual muscle growth.
That's a great way to look at it.
And if you don't have the muscle, they pull their funding.
Exactly. And that intense pressure to flex that muscle is making some executives act incredibly recklessly in public.
I am so glad you brought that up because we have this bizarre story today about Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, man. This story.
Yeah, so he proposed building a massive AI data center in Utah, but he ran into heavy opposition from local zoning boards and residents.
With all politics stuff.
Right. But instead of addressing the environmental or infrastructure concerns, O'Leary went on Fox News and literally claimed that the Chinese government was secretly funding the local opposition to his project.
Just a wild claim.
Completely wild.
Yeah.
And fast forward to today, Fox News had to issue a highly awkward on-air apology.
Because it wasn't true.
Right. O'Leary admitted he had absolutely zero evidence for that claim, and the network had to clarify they couldn't substantiate it either.
I mean, what's fascinating here is that it highlights the sheer desperation in the sector right now.
Yeah.
When you have billions of dollars tied up in infrastructure promises, and, a local zoning board in Utah is the only thing standing between you and your quarterly earnings report, the panic sets in.
Yeah, you start grasping at straws.
Exactly. Grasping for a geopolitical boogeyman to try and force local compliance just shows how fragile these massive AI investments really are on the ground.
But, if the pressure to show progress is making billionaires point fingers on cable news, it is also pushing other players into straight-up international smuggling.
Which is crazy.
It is, because the battle for AI dominance is defying national borders entirely at this point.
Well, the geopolitics of technology is basically the defining conflict of this decade. I mean, whoever controls the hardware that processes the data ultimately controls the future economy.
Okay, let's look at what just happened in Taiwan then.
Yeah.
Because this is straight out of a spy thriller.
It really is.
The Keeling District Prosecutor's Office executed a massive coordinated raid across 12 different locations, specifically hitting the offices of Supermicro Computer, or SMCI.
Right.
And the allegations detail a sophisticated operation using falsified shipping documents to smuggle advanced NVIDIA-powered AI servers into China, completely circumventing U.S. export controls.
Just blatantly bypassing the embargo.
Yeah. SMCI shares plummeted over 7% on the news. I mean, this is a criminal probe into evading international blockades.
And to understand the mechanics of this, you really have to look at the overall U.S. strategy. The United States government has been trying to throttle China's AI development by cutting off their access to the most advanced hardware.
Specifically NVIDIA chips.
Right. But the sheer market demand inside China for that compute power makes the black market incredibly lucrative. We are talking about profit margins that rival illicit narcotics.
Wow.
Yeah, so when you have that much demand, the supply chain is going to find a vulnerability, even if it requires, dummy corporations and falsified shipping manifests routed through third-party countries.
But here's a fact from the Daily Tech Reader that actually makes me question the entire premise of those export controls to begin with.
Okay, what's that?
So, at the exact same time as these smuggling raids in Taiwan, China just released the world's first open-source trillion-parameter AI model.
Which is a massive technical achievement.
It is. And for you listening, a parameter in AI is essentially like a synapse in a human brain. It's the variable the model uses to make decisions. So a trillion parameters is a massive, highly sophisticated brain.
Right.
And the kicker here, the Chinese model was built entirely on domestically produced chips.
Yep.
They completely bypassed the need for NVIDIA hardware altogether. So looking at the U.S. strategy, I mean, it feels like they tried to prune a tree. The U.S. thought they were cutting off a branch of China's tech sector to stunt its growth, but all they actually did was force the tree to grow stronger, deeper indigenous roots.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. I mean, technology consistently routes around blockades.
Yeah.
The U.S. export controls were designed to buy time, right, to maintain a multi-year lead in artificial intelligence.
Right.
But by cutting China off from the global standard of NVIDIA, the U.S. essentially created a captive domestic market for Chinese chip manufacturers.
They forced their hand.
Exactly. They forced the Chinese semiconductor industry to innovate at breakneck speed out of pure survival. And if China can now train a trillion parameter model, which requires immense stable compute power entirely on their own silicon, we are looking at a permanent shift in the global balance of tech power.
It's wild to think about.
It is. The indigenous roots have taken hold, and they're now open sourcing the fruits of that labor for the rest of the world to use.
And, while the U.S. government is busy trying to prune the branches of international rivals, they are simultaneously rewriting the fundamental root system of their own domestic laws.
Absolutely.
The Supreme Court handed down 3 monumental rulings today that restructure the American landscape right on the eve of the 2026 midterms.
Huge implications here.
Yeah, and I want to be super clear with you listening right now. We are not taking sides or endorsing any viewpoint here. We are just going to look at the pure mechanics of these rulings, like how they structurally change the board, totally independent of the partisan reactions.
Right, because if we connect this to the bigger picture, the architecture of these decisions will have downstream effects that last for generations, way past the current political cycles.
Okay, so let's lay out the mechanics.
Yeah.
First, a 6-3 ruling upholding birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
Chief Justice Roberts wrote for the majority, cementing that the 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to children born on U.S. soil, regardless of their parents' immigration status.
Right.
Mechanically, this strikes down the executive order from former President Trump that attempted to limit that right.
Exactly.
Second ruling, the court ruled that individual states have the authority to prohibit transgender athletes from competing on girls' and women's sports teams. Trump called that a big win on Truth Social. But mechanically, it shifts the regulatory power from federal protections down to state legislatures.
Right, making it a state-by-state patchwork.
Yep. And third, the court lifted a Watergate-era cap on campaign finance coordination.
Okay, I really want to pause on that third one, because the structural implications for how elections are run in the United States just fundamentally changed overnight.
Okay, explain the mechanics of that Watergate-era cap. Like, how did it work yesterday and how does it work today?
So post-Watergate, the law placed a strict ceiling on how much money a national political party like the DNC or the RNC could spend in direct coordination with a specific candidate's campaign.
Okay.
The idea was to prevent corruption by limiting the centralized financial power of the party bosses. And this cap is actually what gave rise to super PACs in recent years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wealthy donors wanted to spend unlimited money, and since the official parties were capped in what they could do directly, that money just flowed into super PACs. But the catch was that super PACs legally could not coordinate their strategy with the candidate.
They had to pretend they weren't talking to each other.
Exactly. They had to operate independently, which often led to really disjointed messaging.
Okay, so by lifting this coordination cap, the Supreme Court is essentially taking the megaphone away from the rogue independent super PACs and handing it directly back to the formal party apparatus.
Exactly that. It's like removing the salary cap in a professional sports league. The formal political parties can now act as unlimited financial conduits directly alongside their chosen candidates.
Wow.
Yeah, you are going to see a flood of capital moving in highly concentrated, highly coordinated waves this fall. The power has been centralized back into the traditional party structure.
It's just an incredible amount of domestic restructuring. But the thing is, the international scene isn't waiting for the U.S. to sort out its internal rules. We are seeing literal and diplomatic tectonic shifts globally today.
Yeah, the physical devastation we are tracking this week is just sobering.
It is. Down in Venezuela, it has been 6 days since twin 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude earthquakes struck near Caracas, and the confirmed death toll has hit 1,700 people, and tens of thousands are still unaccounted for.
It's awful.
We are not just talking about tragic loss of life. We are talking about total infrastructure collapse.
And the ripple effects of a disaster of this magnitude in South America are immediate. I mean, when a nation's infrastructure is destroyed to this degree, it disrupts regional energy markets, it destroys local economies,
Right.
and it inevitably creates massive migration pressures as people flee the devastation just to survive.
And at the exact same time, we have major geopolitical tremors happening in the Middle East and Central Asia.
Right.
Pakistan just conducted airstrikes across its border into Afghanistan, targeting alleged militant hideouts. And the Afghan government is, of course, condemning them as acts of aggression.
Which is a very tense border right now.
Extremely. Meanwhile, Iranian envoys are sitting in Qatar right now, following up on the release of $6 billion in frozen assets. but the public diplomacy is a complete mess.
Yeah, it's a bit of a circus.
Tehran is publicly disputing claims from U.S. leadership about who actually requested this Doha meeting. They're essentially arguing over who called who first.
Right.
So I have a structural question for you. How do seemingly disconnected events, like a natural disaster in Venezuela, border strikes in Pakistan, and a petty squabble over a meeting invitation in Qatar, how does all that affect the broader global system, especially when U.S. leadership is busy squabbling over a meeting?
It's a great question, and it's because global stability relies on a finite pool of diplomatic bandwidth.
Interesting.
Yeah, international relations is essentially a fragile web of leverage and attention. When a region like Venezuela is physically devastated, it demands intense humanitarian and economic focus from the international community.
Right.
But simultaneously, you have nuclear-armed neighbors like Pakistan and Afghanistan exchanging fire. That requires urgent crisis management to prevent a regional war.
So the attention is split.
Exactly. And the squabble in Qatar, I know it sounds petty, but in international diplomacy, the public perception of leverage is literally everything.
Wow.
If Iran admits they asked for the meeting, they signal economic desperation to their domestic hardliners and to U.S. negotiators. The U.S. and its allies are trying to manage these simultaneous crises, while their own domestic rules are in total flux, like we just talked about.
Right. The SCOTUS rulings.
Exactly. So when bandwidth is stretched this thin across so many different types of crises, the environment becomes ripe for catastrophic miscalculations.
It is just an overwhelming amount of turbulence on the ground. And historically, when the ground gets this shaky, human beings tend to do two things. We consolidate our media for comfort, and we look up at the stars for an escape.
Okay, I am very curious how you are going to weave corporate media and space travel together.
Look, mechanically, they are a perfect study in contrasts. On the media front, the massive Paramount Warner Bros. Discovery merger is officially advancing.
Which is huge news.
Massive. It's a colossal shuffling of the corporate deck, and it is leaving thousands of people totally in the dark about the future editorial leadership of legacy institutions like CBS News, CNN, and 60 Minutes.
The human capital chaos is off the charts.
Exactly. But contrast that corporate uncertainty with what is happening literally 250 miles above our heads today.
The ISS.
Yes. NASA astronauts stepped out of the International Space Station to conduct a live spacewalk, which aired at 8:35 a.m. Eastern on NASA TV. Their mission is to replace a worn wrist joint on the Canadarm2 robotic arm.
The contrast there is pretty striking.
It is the ultimate irony of human progress. Like, we can flawlessly execute a mechanical wrist replacement in zero gravity in a vacuum while hurtling 17,000 miles an hour around the Earth. We have the mathematics of that down to an absolute science.
Yeah.
Yet we cannot figure out who is going to run CNN next week without plunging an entire industry into existential panic.
Well, you know, what's fascinating here is that mechanical engineering in a vacuum is actually entirely predictable.
Right.
In space, you're dealing with the rigid laws of physics. Torque, orbital velocity, material tensile strength. Those elements behave rationally every single time.
Unlike corporate executives.
Exactly. In a corporate merger of that scale, you are dealing with the most unpredictable variables in the universe. Human egos, legacy company cultures, and deeply entrenched editorial philosophies. Physics is easy because it doesn't have an ego. Human systems are impossibly complex.
Well, speaking of the physical realities humans have to deal with, the environment down here on Earth is proving incredibly hostile this week.
Oh, yeah. The compounding effects of the current weather patterns are becoming genuinely dangerous.
Yeah, if you are listening from the American South, you are living this right now. A severe heat wave is just baking the region. The July 4th weekend forecast is showing highs of 97 to 102 degrees across Texas and adjacent states, with the heat index pushing 105.
It's brutal.
But the most dangerous metric isn't actually the daytime high. Looking at Dallas-Fort Worth specifically, the low temperature tonight is only dropping to 77 degrees, with south winds and no frontal relief or rain in sight.
And that low temperature is the critical vulnerability.
Why is that?
Well, when the ambient temperature doesn't drop below the upper 70s at night, the human body never gets a chance to passively cool down and recover from the daytime thermal stress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is a compounding physical toll on biology. And mechanically, it means air conditioning units are going to run at maximum capacity 24 hours a day, which places an immense unbroken strain on the regional power grid.
So please, if you're in those areas, check on your neighbors and stay hydrated. Now, if you are stuck inside riding out that heat, you are likely watching the World Cup, and you are witnessing a structural collapse of the old guard.
The upsets this week have just defied every statistical model.
The round of 32 has been pure chaos.
Yeah,
We aren't just seeing lucky bounces, we are seeing legacy powerhouses systematically dismantled.
it's been wild to watch.
Insane. In Boston, Paraguay eliminated four-time champion Germany 4-3 in a penalty shootout. Julio Enciso had a great header. Kai Havertz equalized in the 54th minute, but keeper Orlando Gil stopped two penalties. Down in Monterrey, Morocco came back from an early deficit to eliminate the Netherlands 3-2 on penalties. Cody Gakpo scored first, but Issa Diop leveled it with a 91st-minute header, and keeper Yassine Bounou made the decisive save.
Unbelievable.
And in Dallas, Norway knocked out Ivory Coast 2-1 behind an Erling Haaland goal, setting up a clash with Brazil at MetLife on July 5th. We're watching the Giants fall one by one.
And we still have more to come.
Right. Tonight we have France versus Sweden at MetLife at 5 p.m. Eastern, and Mexico versus Ecuador at Azteca at 9 p.m., plus Wednesday's slate, England versus Congo in Atlanta, Belgium versus Senegal in Seattle, and the USMNT versus Bosnia in San Francisco.
So what does this all mean? The sheer unpredictability of it all. Giants like Germany and the Netherlands sent packing by underdogs.
Well, it raises an important question, and it actually circles all the way back to the mechanics of the tech markets we discussed at the top of the hour.
Oh, I love a good full circle moment. Yeah, we are seeing a democratization of capability. In global soccer, the training methods, the data analytics, and the tactical scouting that used to be totally exclusive to wealthy federations like Germany or the Netherlands, they are now globally accessible.
The knowledge gap is completely closed.
Exactly. The underdog nations have the exact same tactical blueprints, and whether you are analyzing a tech monopoly's market cap or a legacy soccer team's historical pedigree, past dominance offers zero guarantee of future survival.
Wow, yeah.
We saw the Magnificent Seven lose $2.3 trillion because investors realized that holding the infrastructure crown yesterday doesn't mean you will hold it tomorrow when the economic realities shift. We are seeing legacy sports teams eliminated early for the exact same reason. The gap between the established giants and the hungry underdogs is closing everywhere.
It is a summer of rapid recalibration. That is the true through line of everything we have unpacked from the Daily Tech Reader today.
It really is.
We started by looking at a $2.3 trillion reality check in the AI markets, and then followed a trail of smuggled microchips to a newly open-sourced indigenous Chinese AI model.
Right.
We broke down the mechanics of three structural shifts from the Supreme Court that redefine citizenship, sports, and the literal funding mechanisms of political campaigns. We analyzed the compounding bandwidth drain of devastating global earthquakes and diplomatic posturing. We marveled at the predictability of a zero-gravity spacewalk compared to corporate media mergers, and we watched the old guard crumble in the World Cup.
And for you listening, the key takeaway is that the foundational systems are resetting. The rules that govern 2025 are no longer the rules governing the second half of 2026.
Yeah.
The ground is shifting, and systemic agility is now far more valuable than institutional legacy.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We have seen today that cutting-edge artificial intelligence can now be built entirely outside the U.S. ecosystem. We have seen trillion-dollar tech valuations just evaporate in a weekend. We have seen underdog nations tactically dismantle world champions on the pitch. Are we currently living through the absolute end of the establishment monopoly across all facets of society?
It's the big question.
Has the protective moat finally dried up for the giants? Keep that question in mind as you watch the USMNT match this week or, the next time you log in to check your 401k. Until next time, keep digging deeper.